The summer of 1990 was meant to be a season of adventure and growth for 12-year-old identical twins, Adam and Erin Miller. Their parents, Robert and Susan Miller, had enrolled them in Camp Pine Ridge, a prestigious summer program nestled deep in the Cascade Mountains of Oregon, believing that the experience would help their sons develop independence and confidence before starting 7th grade in the fall. Camp Pine Ridge had been operating since 1952, built on 500 acres of pristine wilderness 40 miles east of Portland. The camp was renowned for its rigorous outdoor education program, its commitment to character development, and its impressive safety record. In nearly 4 decades of operation, no serious accidents had occurred, and the camp's reputation for responsible supervision had made it a favorite among affluent families throughout the Pacific Northwest. Adam and Erin Miller were inseparable in the way that only identical twins can be. Born just 17 minutes apart, they had developed their own private language as toddlers, shared the same dreams at night, and seemed to communicate through an invisible connection that went beyond ordinary sibling bonds. Physically, they were nearly impossible to tell apart. Both had sandy brown hair that refused to stay combed, bright green eyes that sparkled with mischief, and identical patterns of freckles across their noses. Their parents often joked that raising Adam and Erin was like having one child with supernatural abilities to be in 2 places at once. The boys finished each other's sentences, knew when the other was hurt or upset even when they were in different rooms, and had developed an elaborate system of switching identities that they used to confuse teachers, babysitters, and anyone else who couldn't reliably tell them apart. Robert Miller was a successful architect in Portland, while Susan worked as a pediatric nurse at Oregon Health Sciences University. They were devoted parents who wanted their sons to experience the kind of outdoor adventures that had been formative in their own childhoods. Camp Pine Ridge seemed like the perfect opportunity for Adam and Erin to challenge themselves in a supervised wilderness environment. The boys had been excited about camp for months, poring over the brochures and planning the activities they wanted to try. Adam was particularly interested in rock climbing and wilderness survival skills, while Erin looked forward to astronomy sessions and nature photography. But their greatest enthusiasm was reserved for the prospect of exploring the vast forest together, away from the structured environment of suburban life. Camp Pine Ridge was divided into several age-appropriate sections, with campers housed in rustic wooden cabins that accommodated 8 boys each. Adam and Erin were assigned to Cabin 7 in the Trailblazers section for 11 and 12-year-olds, along with 6 other boys from various parts of Oregon and Washington. The camp's director, Mr. William Bill Patterson, was a former Marine who had purchased the property in 1975 and had dedicated himself to creating a program that combined outdoor adventure with personal development. Patterson was beloved by generations of campers for his ability to balance discipline with fun, pushing children to exceed their own expectations while maintaining an environment of safety and support. The counselors at Camp Pine Ridge were carefully selected college students and recent graduates who underwent extensive training in wilderness safety, child psychology, and emergency response. The ratio of counselors to campers was kept deliberately low to ensure individual attention and supervision. Adam and Erin's cabin was supervised by Jake Morrison, a 22-year-old forestry student from Oregon State University, who was beginning his 3rd summer at Pine Ridge. Jake was known for his enthusiasm for outdoor education and his talent for connecting with even the most homesick or reluctant campers. The first 3 weeks of camp passed without incident. Adam and Erin threw themselves into camp activities with characteristic enthusiasm, quickly becoming popular with both counselors and fellow campers. They excelled in team challenges, demonstrated natural aptitude for outdoor skills, and seemed to be having the time of their lives. Jake Morrison later told investigators that the twins were model campers who followed rules, participated eagerly in all activities, and showed genuine leadership potential. They were particularly gifted at orienteering and wilderness navigation, often helping other campers who struggled with map reading and compass use. Those boys had an almost supernatural sense of direction, Jake recalled during police interviews. They could find their way through the forest like they had built-in GPS systems, and they worked together so seamlessly that it was like watching one mind operating in 2 bodies. The other boys in Cabin 7 were equally impressed with the twins' abilities. Tommy Chen, a shy 11-year-old from Seattle, later told investigators that Adam and Erin had helped him overcome his fear of heights during a rock climbing session. Marcus Washington, a 12-year-old from Portland, described how the twins had shared their care packages with campers whose families hadn't sent supplies. They were really nice kids, Marcus told police. They never made anyone feel left out, and they were always trying to help other people have a good time. They loved being at camp and were always talking about coming back next summer. The night of July 27, 1990, began like any other evening at Camp Pine Ridge. The day had been hot and humid, with temperatures reaching the mid-80s and storm clouds building over the mountains throughout the afternoon. The camp's weather monitoring equipment indicated that a significant thunderstorm system was approaching, but such weather was common during Oregon summers and was not considered cause for special concern. Evening activities proceeded normally, with campers participating in a campfire program that included songs, ghost stories, and a astronomy presentation about summer constellations. Adam and Aaron were active participants, leading several camp songs and asking detailed questions about star navigation during the astronomy session. Jake Morrison conducted the standard evening check-in at Cabin 7 around 9:30 p.m., confirming that all 8 boys were present and accounted for. The twins were in their assigned bunks, Adam in the lower bunk on the left side of the cabin, Aaron in the upper bunk directly above him, and appeared to be settling in for the night. Lights out was called at 10 p.m., and Jake made a final inspection of all the cabins in his section before retiring to the counselors' quarters approximately a quarter-mile away. This was standard procedure at Pine Ridge. Counselors maintained close supervision throughout the day, but were not required to stay in individual cabins overnight, as the age group was considered mature enough for supervised independence. The thunderstorm arrived around midnight, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and frequent lightning strikes. The storm was more severe than forecasts had predicted, with wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour and rainfall rates that quickly overwhelmed the camp's drainage systems. Jake Morrison was awakened around 1 a.m. by the sound of a tree falling near the counselors' quarters. He conducted a quick inspection of his assigned cabins using a flashlight, checking for obvious damage and confirming that all buildings appeared structurally sound. The inspection was necessarily brief, due to the dangerous conditions, but Jake could see lights in several cabin windows and heard no calls for help. The storm continued for approximately 3 hours, finally moving east around 4 a.m. As dawn broke and the weather cleared, Jake began a more thorough inspection of the Trailblazers section, checking each cabin for storm damage and ensuring that all campers were safe and accounted for. It was during this morning inspection that Jake made the discovery that would transform Camp Pine Ridge from a place of childhood adventure into the site of one of Oregon's most baffling missing persons cases. When Jake entered Cabin 7 to conduct his morning head count, he immediately noticed that the bunk beds formerly occupied by Adam and Aaron Miller were empty. All the other boys in the cabin were present and accounted for, but the twins were nowhere to be found. Jake's first assumption was that the boys had gotten up early and had gone to the dining hall or the bathroom facilities, but a quick search of the immediate area revealed no sign of them. Their personal belongings remained in their assigned lockers, their clothes from the previous day were still in the dirty laundry bag, and their camp identification bracelets were hanging on their bedposts. More troubling, when Jake questioned the other boys in Cabin 7, none of them had any memory of the twins leaving during the night. Tommy Chen, who slept in the bunk closest to the twins, insisted that he had been awakened several times by the thunder, but had seen Adam and Aaron in their beds each time he looked around the cabin. "They were definitely there when I checked during the storm," Tommy told Jake with certainty. "I remember seeing Adam in the bottom bunk and Aaron on top. They were both sleeping, or at least lying quietly in their beds." Jake immediately contacted Camp Director Bill Patterson, who initiated the camp's missing camper protocol. All activities were suspended. Counselors conducted a systematic search of the immediate camp area, and the local sheriff's department was notified of the situation. Within 2 hours, Pine Ridge was swarming with law enforcement personnel, search and rescue teams, and volunteers from the surrounding communities. The Oregon State Police took command of the search operation, bringing in specialized equipment and expertise for wilderness rescue missions. Detective Ray Thompson, a 20-year veteran of the Oregon State Police who specialized in missing persons cases, took charge of the investigation. Thompson had handled dozens of cases involving missing children in wilderness areas, and he approached the search with systematic thoroughness. The first priority was establishing a timeline and determining when the twins had last been definitively seen. Jake Morrison's evening inspection at 9:30 p.m. provided the last confirmed sighting of both boys in their cabin. The storm had made it impossible for anyone to conduct visual checks during the night, creating a window of approximately 7 hours during which the twins could have disappeared. Detective Thompson interviewed every person at the camp, starting with the boys in cabin 7 and expanding to include all campers and staff members. The interviews revealed no unusual activity, no signs that the twins had been planning to leave the cabin, and no indication of any problems that might have motivated them to run away. Adam and Aaron were happy campers, Thompson noted in his initial report. Every person interviewed described them as enthusiastic, well-adjusted boys who were having a positive camp experience. There were no behavioral issues, no conflicts with other campers or staff, and no indication of homesickness or desire to leave early. The search operation expanded rapidly, with teams of trained personnel systematically combing through hundreds of square miles of wilderness surrounding the camp. The terrain was challenging. Dense forest, steep ravines, rocky outcrops, and numerous streams and rivers that could be dangerous to navigate, especially for children. Search dogs were brought in to track the twins' scent, but the heavy rains from the storm had washed away most traces. The dogs could detect the boys' scent around their cabin and along the main pathways of the camp, but the trails disappeared completely at the edge of the cleared camp area. Helicopter searches with thermal imaging equipment scanned the forest canopy, looking for any signs of the missing boys. Ground teams used systematic grid patterns to ensure complete coverage of the search area, calling the twins' names and listening for any response. The investigation also considered the possibility of abduction, despite the remote location and the lack of evidence supporting such a theory. Background checks were conducted on all camp staff, and investigators examined the possibility that strangers might have accessed the camp during the storm. But Camp Pine Ridge was located at the end of a single mountain road, 40 miles from the nearest town, with no other access routes except hiking trails that would be impassable during a severe storm. The likelihood that unknown individuals could have reached the camp, located the specific cabin where the twins were sleeping, and removed them without being detected, seemed virtually impossible. As days passed without any trace of Adam and Aaron, the search operation became one of the largest missing persons efforts in Oregon history. The story attracted national media attention, with news crews from major networks setting up outside the camp and broadcasting updates about the search. Robert and Susan Miller arrived at Pine Ridge within hours of being notified about their son's disappearance. The couple was devastated, but maintained hope that the boys would be found alive. They established a command post at a nearby motel and worked closely with search coordinators to provide any information that might be helpful. Adam and Aaron are smart, resourceful boys, Susan Miller told reporters. They know basic wilderness survival skills, and they have each other for support. We believe they're out there somewhere, waiting for rescue teams to find them. The twins' parents also provided insights into their sons' personalities and capabilities that helped guide the search effort. The boys were experienced hikers who had been camping with their family since they were very young. They knew how to find shelter, locate water sources, and signal for help if they were lost. But this knowledge also made their disappearance more puzzling. If Adam and Aaron had simply gotten lost during the storm, they should have been able to survive in the wilderness long enough to be found by search teams. The fact that no trace of them was discovered suggested either that they had traveled much farther than seemed possible, or that something more serious had happened to them. Psychic investigators and volunteers offered their services, claiming to have visions or insights about the twins' location. Every tip was investigated, leading search teams to remote areas throughout the Cascade Range. But none of these efforts produced any credible evidence about what had happened to Adam and Aaron. 3 weeks after the twins' disappearance, the intensive search operation was scaled back to a more limited ongoing effort. Occasional searches continued for months, and the case remained active, but the daily deployment of large search teams was no longer sustainable. The impact on Camp Pine Ridge was devastating. Parents began withdrawing their children from the program, and enrollment for the following summer dropped by 70%. Bill Patterson was forced to close the camp permanently in 1992, unable to overcome the negative publicity and liability concerns associated with the unsolved disappearance. The camp property was sold to a private developer who planned to convert it into a residential retreat, but those plans never materialized. The remote location and the tragic associations made the property difficult to market, and it remained abandoned for over 2 decades. Robert and Susan Miller never recovered from the loss of their sons. They divorced 3 years after the disappearance, unable to cope with their grief and the strain of an unresolved tragedy. Robert moved to California and remarried, while Susan remained in Portland but became increasingly reclusive. Detective Thompson continued working on the case even after his retirement from the state police, becoming obsessed with solving the mystery that had defined the final years of his career. He maintained files on every aspect of the investigation and regularly returned to the Pine Ridge area to conduct informal searches. "Those boys didn't just vanish into thin air," Thompson often said. "Something happened to them that night, and somewhere in those mountains is evidence that will explain what it was. I won't give up until I find the answer." But despite Thompson's dedication and the efforts of countless volunteers and investigators over the years, no trace of Adam and Aaron Miller was ever found. The case became one of the most famous unsolved disappearances in Pacific Northwest history, inspiring books, documentaries, and conspiracy theories about what might have happened to the missing twins. By 2014, 24 years after the twins' disappearance, the Pine Ridge property had become an unofficial memorial site visited by amateur investigators, paranormal enthusiasts, and people fascinated by unsolved mysteries. The abandoned camp buildings were deteriorating but still recognizable, standing like empty monuments to the tragedy that had ended the camp's 40-year history. It was this abandoned property that attracted the attention of Marcus Rodriguez, a documentary filmmaker from Los Angeles who specialized in investigating cold cases and unsolved mysteries. Rodriguez had built a reputation for thorough research and sensitive treatment of tragic stories, and he had been planning a film about missing children cases in the Pacific Northwest. The Adam and Aaron Miller case was a natural focus for Rodriguez's project. The story had all the elements that made for compelling documentary material: two innocent children, a mysterious disappearance, an extensive but fruitless investigation, and a setting that remained frozen in time as a reminder of the tragedy. Rodriguez obtained permission to film at the abandoned Pine Ridge property from the current landowner, who had purchased it for back taxes and had no immediate plans for development. The filmmaker planned to spend several days at the site, documenting the current condition of the facilities and interviewing people who had been involved in the original search effort. Rodriguez arrived at Pine Ridge in early October 2014, accompanied by his camera operator Jake Stevens and sound engineer Lisa Chang. The team brought sophisticated equipment including night vision cameras, thermal imaging devices, and sensitive audio recording gear that would allow them to document the abandoned camp under various conditions. The first day of filming focused on establishing shots of the property and its surroundings. The camp buildings were in various states of decay. Some cabins had collapsed roofs, others had been vandalized by trespassers, and all showed the effects of 24 years of neglect. But Cabin 7, where Adam and Aaron had been staying, remained structurally intact, its windows boarded up but its basic structure still solid. Rodriguez had done extensive research before arriving at Pine Ridge, interviewing retired Detective Thompson, former camp director Bill Patterson, and several people who had been involved in the original search. These interviews provided context for the documentary and helped Rodriguez understand the layout of the camp and the sequence of events surrounding the twins' disappearance. "The thing that always bothered me about this case," Thompson told Rodriguez during a filmed interview, "was how complete the disappearance was. Usually when children get lost in the wilderness, we find some trace, a piece of clothing, footprints, some indication of which direction they went. But with Adam and Aaron, it was as if they simply ceased to exist." The second day of filming involved documenting the interior of various camp buildings, including Cabin 7. Rodriguez's team carefully removed the boards from the windows and doors, revealing interiors that had been untouched since the camp's closure. The cabins were filled with debris and showed signs of animal habitation, but many original features remained intact. Cabin 7 was particularly well preserved, perhaps because local people considered it a memorial to the missing twins and were reluctant to disturb it. The bunk beds where Adam and Aaron had slept were still in their original positions, covered with dust and debris but recognizable as the place where the boys had spent their final night at camp. Rodriguez set up cameras throughout the cabin to document its current condition and to capture footage that would help viewers understand the environment where the twins had disappeared. The filming was emotionally challenging for everyone involved, as the abandoned spaces served as tangible reminders of the tragedy that had occurred there. As evening approached, Rodriguez decided to leave the cameras running overnight to capture time-lapse footage of the cabin in various lighting conditions. This was a standard technique in his documentaries, often revealing details that weren't visible during normal filming hours. The team retired to their motorhome, which they had parked in the camp's main clearing, and reviewed the footage they had captured during the day. Everything appeared normal, and Rodriguez was satisfied with the quality of material they were gathering for the documentary. But when they reviewed the overnight footage the next morning, they discovered something that would fundamentally change their understanding of the Pine Ridge property and its connection to the missing twins. The time-lapse cameras had been set to record continuously throughout the night, with infrared capability that allowed them to capture images in complete darkness. Most of the footage showed exactly what Rodriguez expected: empty rooms gradually changing as moonlight moved across the windows, and small animals occasionally scurried through the frame. But at 2:17 a.m., something extraordinary appeared on the camera positioned in cabin 7. The screen showed what appeared to be small handprints appearing on the inside surface of one of the windows, as if invisible children were pressing their hands against the glass from inside the cabin. The handprints were clearly visible in the infrared footage, showing up as heat signatures against the cool glass surface. They appeared gradually, as if someone was slowly pressing their palms against the window, and they remained visible for approximately 30 seconds before fading away. "This has to be some kind of equipment malfunction," Lisa Chang said, as the team watched the footage repeatedly. "There's no way actual handprints could appear on that window." The cabin was empty all night, but Jake Stevens, the camera operator, insisted that the equipment was functioning properly. "I've been using these cameras for 10 years, he said. "I know what equipment malfunctions look like, and this isn't one. Something actually created those heat signatures on the glass." Rodriguez was skeptical but intrigued. As a documentary filmmaker, he had learned to be cautious about unusual footage that might be explained by technical problems or environmental factors. But the handprints were clearly defined and appeared to be the right size for children's hands. The team decided to investigate further, setting up additional cameras and monitoring equipment throughout cabin 7 for a second night of observation. This time, they also stationed one team member in the motorhome to watch the live feeds from all cameras, looking for any unusual activity as it occurred. The second night's surveillance produced even more dramatic results. At 1:43 a.m., Rodriguez's thermal imaging cameras detected what appeared to be two small figures moving through the cabin, visible only as heat signatures that suggested the presence of children-sized bodies. The figures moved purposefully through the space, seeming to examine the bunk beds and other features of the cabin. At one point, they appeared to approach the window where the handprints had appeared the previous night, and the live monitor showed additional handprints appearing on the glass. Lisa Chang, who was monitoring the feeds, immediately radioed to Rodriguez and Stevens, who were sleeping in the motorhome. "You need to see this," she said urgently. "There are heat signatures in the cabin that look like children, and they're moving around like they're looking for something." Rodriguez and Stevens rushed to cabin 7 with handheld cameras, but when they entered the building they found it completely empty. No signs of disturbance, no indication that anyone had been inside, and no explanation for the thermal signatures they had recorded on camera. The handprints on the window were still visible, however. Fresh condensation on the glass showed clear palm prints and finger marks that appeared to have been made from inside the cabin just moments before the team's arrival. "This is impossible," Stevens said, examining the prints with a flashlight. "These are definitely fresh handprints, and they're the right size for kids around 12 years old. But there's no way anyone could have gotten out of this cabin without us seeing them." The team spent the rest of the night reviewing footage and trying to find rational explanations for what they had observed. But every technical analysis confirmed the same conclusion. The thermal cameras had recorded heat signatures consistent with the presence of two children moving through cabin 7, even though visual inspection revealed that the building was completely empty. Rodriguez contacted thermal imaging experts and video analysis specialists, sending them copies of the footage for independent examination. The results were uniformly puzzling. The recordings showed clear evidence of heat-generating sources moving through the cabin, but there was no visible cause for these thermal signatures. Dr. Patricia Vance, a physicist from Portland State University who specialized in thermal dynamics, provided a detailed analysis of the footage. "The thermal signatures are consistent with human body heat," she reported. "The size and shape suggest children, and the temperatures are exactly what you would expect from living human beings. But if there were actual children in that cabin, they should have been visible to normal cameras as well." The discovery of the unexplained thermal signatures prompted Rodriguez to expand his investigation beyond simple documentary filming. He contacted paranormal researchers, brought in additional equipment for more sophisticated monitoring, and began researching the history of the Pine Ridge property for any factors that might explain the unusual phenomena. What Rodriguez discovered was that the Pine Ridge area had a long history of unexplained disappearances and strange occurrences dating back to the 1800s. Native American tribes had traditionally avoided the region, considering it a place where spirits became trapped between worlds. Early settlers had reported missing livestock, unexplained lights in the forest, and the sounds of children playing in areas where no children were present. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a geologist from the University of Oregon, was brought in to examine the geological features of the Pine Ridge area. Her analysis revealed the presence of unusual mineral formations and underground water systems that created unique electromagnetic conditions. The geology here is quite remarkable, Dr. Martinez explained to Rodriguez. There are significant deposits of quartz and other piezoelectric minerals that can generate electrical fields under pressure. Combined with the underground water systems and the particular topography of this valley, you have conditions that could theoretically create electromagnetic anomalies. These geological factors, according to Dr. Martinez, might explain some of the unusual phenomena reported in the area over the years, but they didn't provide a clear explanation for the specific thermal signatures captured on Rodriguez's cameras. Rodriguez continued his investigation for several weeks, documenting numerous additional instances of unexplained activity at the abandoned camp. Motion sensors detected movement in empty buildings. Audio equipment recorded what sounded like children's voices calling for help, and multiple cameras captured thermal signatures suggesting the presence of small figures throughout the property. The most dramatic evidence came during Rodriguez's final night of filming at Pine Ridge. Using an array of sophisticated monitoring equipment, his team documented what appeared to be a complete recreation of the events surrounding the twins' disappearance. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the same time when handprints had first appeared on the cabin window, thermal cameras throughout the property began detecting multiple heat signatures moving in coordinated patterns. The signatures appeared to originate from cabin 7 and moved through the camp following routes that would have been familiar to anyone who had stayed there. Audio equipment recorded what sounded like children's voices calling for help, saying names that sounded like Adam and Aaron. The voices seemed to be coming from multiple locations simultaneously, as if the speakers were moving rapidly through the forest surrounding the camp. Most remarkably, the thermal signatures appeared to be following the exact search patterns that had been used by rescue teams 24 years earlier. The heat sources moved through the same grid patterns, followed the same trails, and seemed to be responding to the same calls for help that search teams had used during the original investigation. It's as if we're watching the search operation replaying itself, Rodriguez observed as he monitored the real-time feeds. But instead of search teams looking for missing children, we're seeing thermal signatures that might be the children themselves, still searching for a way home. The phenomenon continued for approximately 3 hours, exactly matching the duration of the storm that had occurred on the night of the twins' disappearance. As dawn approached, the thermal signatures gradually faded, and the electronic anomalies ceased. Rodriguez's investigation had documented compelling evidence of paranormal activity at the abandoned Pine Ridge camp, but it had also raised more questions than it answered. If the thermal signatures really represented the missing twins, what had caused them to become trapped in some kind of supernatural loop? And more importantly, was there any way to help them find peace? Dr. Elena Vasquez, a professor of theoretical physics from Oregon State University, provided one possible explanation for the phenomena Rodriguez had documented. According to Dr. Vasquez, the unique geological conditions at Pine Ridge might have created what physicists call a temporal distortion field. Under extreme electromagnetic conditions, Dr. Vasquez explained, it's theoretically possible for consciousness to become detached from linear time. If Adam and Aaron experienced some kind of trauma during the storm, their consciousness might have become trapped in a quantum loop, continually reliving the events of that night. This theory suggested that the twins might not be dead in the conventional sense, but rather existing in a state of suspended animation where their consciousness was replaying the same temporal sequence over and over again. The thermal signatures and other phenomena might represent their attempts to communicate across the dimensional barrier that separated them from normal reality. Rodriguez's documentary titled The Pine Ridge Loop premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2015 and generated significant controversy and discussion. Skeptics dismissed the thermal signatures as equipment malfunctions or natural phenomena, while believers argued that the footage provided compelling evidence of consciousness surviving after death. But for Rodriguez, the investigation had become more than just a documentary project. He had become convinced that Adam and Aaron Miller were indeed still present at Pine Ridge, trapped in some kind of temporal prison, and he felt a responsibility to help them find a way out. Working with physicists, paranormal researchers, and electronics specialists, Rodriguez developed a plan to establish direct communication with the entities at Pine Ridge. Using electromagnetic field generators and specialized audio equipment, the team attempted to create a bridge between normal reality and the temporal loop where the twins appeared to be trapped. The communication attempts produced remarkable results. Using electromagnetic pulses modulated to match the frequencies detected during the paranormal activity, Rodriguez's team was able to elicit responses that followed clear patterns and seemed to demonstrate intelligence and awareness. The responses came in the form of thermal signatures that appeared to spell out letters and words on specially prepared surfaces. Over several sessions, the entities managed to communicate simple messages that confirmed they were indeed Adam and Aaron Miller. "Still here," was the first clear message, spelled out by thermal handprints appearing on a metal panel. "Help us," followed shortly after. "Want to go home." The communication sessions revealed that the twins retained their memories and personalities but were confused about their situation. They remembered the storm, remembered being frightened, and remembered trying to find help. But they had no understanding of how much time had passed or why they couldn't interact normally with the physical world. "Everyone looking for us," the twins communicated during one session. "We keep calling, but nobody hears." Rodriguez realized that the twins had been experiencing the search efforts in real time, watching as hundreds of people looked for them but being unable to make contact. From their perspective, the search was still ongoing, and they were still 12-year-old boys trying to find their way back to safety. Working with Dr. Vasquez and her team of theoretical physicists, Rodriguez developed a plan to attempt to break the temporal loop and free the twins from their dimensional prison. The plan involved using precisely calibrated electromagnetic fields to disrupt the quantum conditions that were maintaining the loop. The liberation attempt was scheduled for the 25th anniversary of the twins' disappearance, July 27, 2015. Rodriguez's team, along with scientific observers and paranormal researchers, assembled at Pine Ridge with specialized equipment designed to generate the electromagnetic patterns that might break the temporal distortion. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the time when the paranormal activity was strongest, the team activated their electromagnetic field generators. The equipment created a complex pattern of energy pulses designed to interfere with the quantum loop that was trapping the twins' consciousness. The results were immediate and dramatic. Thermal cameras throughout the property detected massive heat signatures moving rapidly toward Cabin 7, as if every paranormal entity in the area was being drawn to a single point. Audio equipment recorded what sounded like a choir of children's voices all calling out simultaneously. For approximately 30 minutes, the electronic equipment registered energy levels far beyond anything previously recorded at the site. Then suddenly, everything went silent. The thermal signatures disappeared, the electromagnetic anomalies ceased, and Pine Ridge became completely quiet for the first time in 25 years. Rodriguez and his team waited nervously for any sign that the liberation attempt had been successful. As dawn broke over the abandoned camp, they conducted a systematic search of the property, looking for any indication of what had happened during the electromagnetic event. It was Dr. Vasquez who made the discovery that confirmed the success of their efforts. Near the entrance to Cabin 7, she found 2 sets of small footprints in the soft earth, fresh prints that appeared to have been made by children's bare feet walking away from the cabin toward the forest. The footprints led to the edge of the cleared camp area, and then simply stopped, as if the children who had made them had finally found their way to whatever destination they had been seeking for 25 years. "The prints are definitely fresh," Dr. Vasquez confirmed. "They were made within the last few hours, and they show a walking pattern consistent with children around 12 years old. More importantly, the electromagnetic monitoring equipment was no longer detecting the anomalous energy signatures that had characterized Pine Ridge for decades. Whatever phenomenon had been trapping the twins in a temporal loop appeared to have been successfully disrupted." Rodriguez returned to Pine Ridge several times over the following months, conducting additional monitoring to confirm that the paranormal activity had indeed ceased. The thermal cameras no longer detected unexplained heat signatures, the audio equipment recorded only normal forest sounds, and the electromagnetic field readings were consistent with typical background levels. The liberation of Adam and Aaron Miller from their temporal prison became the focus of Rodriguez's second documentary, Breaking the Loop, which premiered in 2016. The film presented compelling evidence that consciousness could indeed survive physical death under certain circumstances, and that scientific intervention might be able to help trapped spirits find peace. The scientific community remained divided about the validity of Rodriguez's work. Some physicists argued that his team had documented genuine temporal phenomena that expanded our understanding of consciousness and reality. Others maintained that the entire investigation could be explained by equipment malfunctions, environmental factors, and the power of suggestion. But for the families affected by the Pine Ridge mystery, Rodriguez's work provided something that 25 years of conventional investigation had not been able to offer: answers and closure. Robert Miller, Adam and Aaron's father, participated in Rodriguez's final documentary and expressed gratitude for the filmmaker's efforts. "I never stopped believing that my sons were out there somewhere," he said. Marcus Rodriguez helped them find their way home, even if home wasn't what any of us expected it to be. Susan Miller had passed away in 2012, 3 years before the liberation attempt, never knowing the fate of her missing sons. But according to Rodriguez's communications with the twins, she had been aware of their situation and had been working from her own spiritual dimension to help guide the rescue effort. "Mom says thank you," was one of the final messages communicated by the twins before their liberation. "She helped us understand." Pine Ridge remains abandoned, but it is no longer considered a place of tragedy and mystery. The camp property has been purchased by a conservation trust that plans to preserve it as a memorial to the power of love and determination to transcend even the boundaries between life and death. A memorial plaque has been installed near Cabin 7, commemorating Adam and Aaron Miller and acknowledging the 25-year effort to help them find peace. The plaque includes a quote from Rodriguez's final communication with the twins: "Thank you for not giving up on us." The Pine Ridge case has inspired new research into the relationship between consciousness and quantum physics, with several universities establishing programs to study similar phenomena. Dr. Vasquez leads a team at Oregon State University that investigates reports of temporal anomalies and works to develop scientific methods for helping trapped consciousness find resolution. The Miller twins proved that death is not necessarily the end of awareness, Dr. Vasquez explains. Their case opens possibilities for understanding consciousness that we're only beginning to explore. They've shown us that love and determination can bridge gaps between dimensions that we never imagined possible. Rodriguez continues to investigate cases of missing children and unexplained disappearances, using the techniques he developed at Pine Ridge to help families find answers and, when possible, to help trapped spirits find peace. His work has gained international attention and has inspired similar investigations around the world. The story of Adam and Aaron Miller has become a testament to the power of persistence in the face of impossible circumstances. Two 12-year-old boys, lost in a storm and trapped between dimensions, never gave up hope of going home. And 25 years later, a documentary filmmaker with sophisticated equipment and an open mind helped them complete their journey. Camp Pine Ridge may be abandoned, but its legacy lives on in the knowledge that consciousness is far more resilient and resourceful than anyone had previously imagined. The twins who vanished during a summer storm in 1990 ultimately taught the world that some connections are stronger than death, some voices can transcend time, and some mysteries can be solved by those brave enough to listen for answers in places where science and spirit intersect. Their handprints no longer appear on cabin windows, but their story continues to inspire hope for families dealing with similar losses and to encourage researchers pushing the boundaries of human understanding about the nature of consciousness, time, and the mysterious forces that connect us all across the vast dimensions of existence.